second chance in the game.
My name is Matt Holm. I'm the defensive coordinator, and I show you our accolades here so you believe there's a little bit of reason to listen to me. I've been the defensive coordinator from 2011 till the present. I started with Batavia High School football as a coach in 1991 as a linebacker coach and a variety of all kinds of other things before we were platooning. I played high school football here, so I'm Bulldog through and through. But part of our presentation today is not just the transition. I mean, we're not really about X's and O's. What this presentation is more about, the purpose of the presentation, is to aid in a transition. Whether it's from a 3-4 to a 4-3 or a 4-3 to a 3-4 or any other type of transition, wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we went through to do that. Most of the time when a team's making a transition, it's somebody new's coming in and they're moving because this guy is a 3-4 guy and the guy before him was a 4-3 guy. You don't see very often where a team makes a transition, particularly when they've been successful. And so we are going to address that. After the 2016 season, we decided that we were going to make this transition. And so maybe this will help you with that process. Again, it's not a lot of X's and O's. I'm not a big X's and O's clinician. Quite honestly, if my X's are bigger, faster, and stronger than your O's, it doesn't quite matter what scheme I run or what you run. And so I'm not a big guy to do a lot of chalk talk, but hopefully this will aid you in that process. So there's 3 phases of what I want to talk about here today. The first part is why did we switch in the first place? Again, we'd been successful for quite some time, so why switch horses in the middle of a stream? And then where we were coming from, what was successful, what we wanted to keep, what we wanted to change. And then lastly, you know, every program should have principles. They should have the philosophy that they adhere to, and we didn't want to change any of that. What are those principles that we had to maintain and we were able to keep as we made that transition? So, if we go back to our foundation in the past, we had 26 years in the making of a 4-3 hybrid defense. A lot of flexibility, a lot of movement, different players, different personnel. And again, it was very successful. As part of that, we would take as many linebackers as, I'm a linebacker guy, we'd take as many linebackers as we possibly could and put them on the field. That would often mean telling players, we're going to put your hand on the ground. I'd have a kid that would come up as a sophomore or from sophomore to junior year, and I'd say, I know you played outside backer, but so-and-so's returning. We're going to put your hand on the ground this year. We did a lot of that flexibility. Maybe the following year he'd move back, but it allowed us to be very athletic on our front. We also felt the same way with hybrid safeties and a cover 4, that we were moving safeties around as kind of linebackers will address those things. But we had been very successful. And why are we changing? That's what we're going to address here. For years at the season's end, I'd hear from people, hey, you're moving to a 3-4. I heard you're moving to a 3-4. Hey, coach said you might be moving to a 3-4. I wasn't ready to move to a 3-4. We were being very successful at what we were doing. So why change? Why did we want to make this change? Eventually, as time went by, there were some things that I wanted to do, talking with our head coach, that I felt that would make us better if we had made at least some investigations into some change. So as we got together as a staff, there were several things that we decided we'd better look at first. Are these worth it? Why do we want to make the change? The first one was, my dad used to say, you can't make chicken soup without chicken. We had the right personnel coming. We had a group of linebackers coming as younger kids that we felt we would be much better getting them on the field. We're just graduating 2 all-state guys that are inside linebackers. Both of them played as sophomores in the 4-3. One was an outside backer. One played defensive tackle. He was a former linebacker, and we moved him back over the last couple of years. So we had the ability to do it. Why change? And we're not going to make the change if we don't have the ability. The second thing is a philosophy thing, and I know every defensive coordinator out there believes this. Speed kills. We wanted to get more speed on the field. We felt we were fast with putting as many linebackers on the field as we could, but we wanted to enhance that speed. We felt a 3-4 could do that for us. We wanted to look into that in the investigation. So we were putting people's hands on the ground to try and get that. Ultimately, when we say speed kills, we want to make offensive coordinators and quarterbacks in particular very nervous. I was at a clinic a couple of years ago, and one of you brilliant guys out there said, we don't have to beat each other from sideline to sideline. We have to beat the 16 and 17-year-olds on the field. We want to make those quarterbacks nervous. So this is a film here of just what that looks like for us. Sorry I'm moving it back and forth, but you can see our outside backer here. We're stacking the line to get people's eyes away. There's that flexibility, and then we're bringing that outside backer from the edge. We want to enhance that. We want to get more guys that can do that kind of thing on the field. And I'll show some film here and there on that to kind of show what we were talking about. Not a lot of X's and O's. But quite honestly, even that had gotten predictable. When we were taking people and flexing them, as we call it, we take a D lineman and move them back. Even then, offensive linemen got to a point where they would know who it was. Those guys that we had taken and put their hand on the ground, they didn't practice a lot of pass coverage. So even if we moved them back from a defensive end to an outside backer and we stacked them, or if we took one of our defensive tackles, it was a former Mike, and moved him back to an inside backer, people knew he was still coming. You might be running an X stunt or a separate blitz, but they still knew he was coming. So we were getting predictable, particularly the people in our conference. Geneva, whenever we would flex, they would audible. St. Charles North got good at understanding what we were doing in our 4-3. So we wanted to be less predictable. And as it says at the bottom of the slide here, not only did we want to look like a lion and be sly like a fox, but we wanted to be as mobile and as flexible as we possibly could. And with that, aggressiveness. We want to dictate. We don't want to respond. We want to dictate. And then the big one, as much as I don't like to admit it, some people say the biggest one, but the big one is championships in our routes had been you had to go through the triple option. And so what was going to make it easier for us to be able to defend the triple option when we got to that point? We had to go through Cary Grove and Prairie Ridge and Downers Grove North to be able to get to those state championships that we had desired. And they always seemed to be in the way. The other part of it is St. Charles East had come into our conference and they had switched to a triple option. So playing the triple option, if you guys that know you play it once a year, trying to address it 1 week of the season is a great disadvantage for anybody, and that's why those offenses are always so successful. So, philosophically, we decided if we went to this 3-4, it would give us an odd front. It would be able to allow an extra inside linebacker to help with the veer. And we'll see some of that in video here in a second. Instead of having a Mike now that was a half man going from one side to the other, now it was a nose, and we could try and get him to eat up double teams and specialize that position. And so we felt that that might be something that could help us get through to those championships. The other part of that is it was something that we could now, as a base part of our defense, practice from June in our camp sessions all the way through till November. And it wasn't like something that we were just going to do once a season for a week. So you can see here that obviously that odd front is going to give us that alignment of the inside backers over the guard. Instead of over the nose and trying to read a triangle, now he's just reading that guard, and it allows him to have a better angle to play veer. When we were looking to make this change and people were talking and, yeah, you're making this change, and we'd had some conversations. Again, I go back to that idea of somebody new is usually brought in. I'm not a 3-4 guy. I don't understand a 3-4, but I'm going to look into it. And, there's a lot of people that'll tell you the merits of a 3-4, but transitioning to one is a whole other issue. And I kind of dead set, I'm not sure. But I read an article in the Bronco Report, and the Bronco Report going to a 3-4. A lot of questions in Denver about why are we moving to this 3-4? And somebody asked the wise question, what's the difference between a 3-4 and a 5-2? Looks like the same thing. And the response was, when we put Von Miller's hand on the ground, it's a 5-2. When we put him in a 2-point stance, it's a 3-4. I'm sure that's very simplified, but I understood a 5-2 because I had played a 5-2 in college. Now it was something that I could wrap my brain around. And as I started to look at it with the triple option, it made more and more sense. So here you can see this is St. Charles East. They're the big triple option team in our conference, getting better each year, and we had to be able to match that. This is a belly play that you can see on the video. You can see the motion. Those of you guys that have played some triple option, you're going to understand what's going on right away here. But the guard is going to option the defensive end, and he's going to go straight after our inside linebacker. The wing's going to try and come down too. Our defensive end makes a nice little dip move and maintains his ground. We felt that that's part of our process. In a even front, I'm not sure that he would have been able to make the same type of play. Again, the attention is put on the mic, and it leaves him free and disciplined. So you can see as this plays out, we were able to get some of the success from what we wanted with that. If we look at it from the other point now, and again, I'm not doing a whole bunch of X's and O's, but if we look at later on in that game, now they're going to block down on double team on the end. You can see our Mike is going to be able to come clean. He's got a much better angle than he would in a 4-3 to be able to play that veer. And so, this is what we were gunning for. And it's a big part of the process. We feel like we've become more successful against that triple option. There's a lot of things, again, that go into that. There's the fact that we practice against it quite a bit, but we don't have to change our defense each time we go up against triple option. So where are we coming from? I mean, what do we keep? What do we want to keep that has been very successful? And what can we improve on? That's the second phase of what we went into. Again, we've had a lot of success. There's certain things that we want to, at least in terms of philosophy, hold on to. And then, again, there's reasons that we want to change. We want to get that mobility. We want to get an extra linebacker on the field, more speed, the aggressiveness. So going into this phase of the presentation, I wanted to talk about the things that we came from and that could be fixed and things that we wanted to maintain. We believed in being head up. We still do. I know there's a lot of merit in playing in a 1 technique or a 3 tech, and I won't say we don't do that from time to time, but we are usually a head up team. We're a 0 technique, a 2 technique, a 4 technique, and then we are mobile on every play. We're shifting, we are slanting, stunting, maybe flexing guys, moving in different positions. Our general philosophy has always been that we don't want to be where you want us to be. And so we wanted to make sure that we could keep that. We were a little afraid if we went and moved a lineman out and went to a 3-man front, we'd lose some of that wall that had protected our linebackers for so many years. And that was something that we really needed to study. With that mobility, were we going to be able to coach our linebackers on the inside to jigsaw and move with that line as they were mobile? Could we be successful with that? That was the thing we wanted to maintain. But what we were also looking to address is in our 4-3, our defensive ends quite often had outside contain responsibility. One of the reasons why we wanted those guys to be former outside linebackers. They could understand keeping the shoulder free, they could understand the leverage and all that kind of stuff that we coach on a daily basis. But in a 3-4, we felt we could lose that. We wouldn't have to worry about our defensive ends having to practice that contain because we would be able to maintain that completely with an outside linebacker. So here, this is the semifinal game against Boylan in 2013. This is a very simple line stunt. We're just slanting strong, but you can see how it protects our linebackers. It's not the most athletic looking film in the world. This game was played on a sheet of ice, low 20s that day. But you can see as you watch this that our entire line is moving on the snap of the ball. We feel that if we're doing that, we're either moving with a trap and we're able to follow it and hunt the guy down in the backfield, or if we're going the opposite direction of a trap, then we're actually moving into it and we can take it on. We didn't want to lose that with the 3-4. So as you see the play develop, you can see that entire line moving at once. Look at our middle linebacker. He's not touched. And we knew we could do that with a 4-3. Are we going to be able to maintain that same idea with a 3-4? And if not, can we move linebackers down to be able to give us that even front when we need it? And we certainly felt that that was going to be something we'd be able to do. So again, that was one of the things that we had come from, we had done for years and years and years. It was successful. Why would we want to change that? And this diagram here is a little bit more about pass rush and rush lanes. But again, if you just look at it, you can see now our end responsibility has nothing to do with contain. Even if we have them play a C gap on a slant, they're not going to have to worry about contain. And so that was something for us that we knew we could still maintain the edge, but our ends could now be true linemen that had come up and been coached that the entire time. It's not somebody that I have to take as a former linebacker and move them to end and then move them back. It'd be a little bit more consistency and solid through our program. That then allowed us to address the idea that we were putting hands on the ground. And I keep saying that term because we wanted to be able to see if we could simplify that process. You know, you have a kid and he's worked as an outside backer or an inside backer, and he's got this dream of being this linebacker, and then as he's coming up, he sees this guy in front of him, he goes, well, I got to sit on the bench for a year, or I can go play and put my hand on the ground. But we wanted to be able to make him more effective by continuing to enhance his linebacker skills, and the 3-4 would be able to allow us to do that. So we wouldn't have to constantly put guys' hands on the ground and move them back and forth. And then we wouldn't have to make calls where we're coming off of the line and stacking people and moving them. Again, as while that was very successful for us, it got more and more and more complicated. A 3-4 would allow us to be able to have that same type of approach without having to move guys back and forth. So this is what we were coming from. And as you see this play here, this is Rolling Meadows. In 2013, they were a check with me team, an audible team, a spread team, a no huddle team. And what we knew about them is we wanted to flex every time that they moved. So as you can see, they're making calls, they're doing their checks. We're moving. We don't get anything great in terms of a pass rush here or anything in that regard. They still know who's coming, but we're able to essentially address what they're addressing. And we felt that without having to go back and forth like that, is a 3-4, we can have guys move in and out and stay in their 2-point stance. In that film that you just watched, there was one man on that line that was a D lineman. The other two DNs were both outside linebackers, and the tackle was a Mike that we moved up. So we'd be able to cut out the middleman essentially. And then lastly, in terms of where we came from, was a cover 4. In the mid-90s, to address a lot of double wing stuff, we put in a cover 4 to be able to be balanced, to be able to rotate with our coverage to a cover 3 if we needed to with motion, or to be able to go to a high 2 if we needed to, or to be able to come down and play a man coverage, a single high. Cover 4 allowed us to do a lot of things with flexibility, and we wanted to make sure that we could keep that. Our safeties are guys that we believe are linebackers. They're just not quite the size that you would put up front. They're hybrid. They're definite tacklers. They're free tacklers. They're +1 guys. An offensive coordinator can draw them up on a piece of paper and have them go get the safety, but the safety's not going to be there for him. The safety's too athletic for a tackle or a fullback or something of that nature. We didn't want to lose that. What we wanted to maintain is what you can see, you know, here with the shell that we were talking about before, and the edge responsibilities we'll address in a little bit with our safeties and our outside backers. But what we really wanted to make sure that we could keep is what you see here in this film. Watch where our safety comes from. He's back here. Looks like we're in a cover 4. He's deep. We've obviously got 4 over the top. I'm going to let this roll so you can see it, but you'll see him start to be aggressive right on the snap. He's a good 6, 7, 8 yards off, and we all of a sudden jump to a man coverage. It looks like a 4. We jump to a man coverage. The quarterback has to hold the ball a little bit longer than he expects, and you can see the result. We wanted to be able to do that. We wanted to be able to keep doing that. It was something, obviously, that we have done for years. You can see it here from an end zone version. To the quarterback, he sees that cover 4, okay, he's got that cover 4 look. We're moving on the snap. He holds for just an extra half second, and we get that big play that we want. Our safeties are big play guys. They're game changers, as we call them. And again, now we're even more athletic. We get an extra linebacker on the field and have that safety shell that we want to keep and be able to do those things with the safety. Results in big plays. That's where we had been. That's what we wanted to maintain. So I go to this slide for just a second just to give you a visual. I know you all understand the cover 4, but we could do a whole bunch from this with our secondary in terms of cover 1, 2, 3, 4 man coverage or you know, a red or black coverage. We could do mixed coverages, but when you look at it, we're not changing anything with our front 5. Our outside linebackers, nothing's changing for them in terms of scheme. In terms of language, if you look, a lot of teams, they'll take their backside inside linebacker and call him the Will. And ours, we wanted to keep the Will as an outside backer just so we didn't have to change that language. So our second inside linebacker that we were creating, he happened to be just All-American. I turned to Michael Jancy and said, okay, what's your new position name? You name it. He said, Coach, I'm a hitter. So we changed our inside backer position. Now we had a Mike and a hitter. That's the only thing that's changing is that front 5. If we could keep that shell, then that 3-4 made complete sense to us. So I've named some of them already, but I'm going to go back and review what are the principles that we have as Bulldog, Battle and Bulldog D that we want to maintain but be able to still make this change. And if we can maintain those, and we set ourselves a timeline of January of 2016, actually 2017, but we had gotten beat in the playoffs and didn't like what we saw, and we'd been talking about a conversion over the last couple of years and said if we can make this change, and it's something that we really believe we can do and feel good about it by January 1st, then we're going to take that off season and we're going to make that transition. So the principles we kept. We believe we never want to be where the offensive line expects us. Whether we're on an odd front or an even front, and we can shift and move linemen, whether it's an alignment change or it's a shift at the pre-snap or whether it's a stunt on the snap, and then jigsaw that with the A, B, and C gaps with the inside backers, and maintain that principle, then it's a go. This is something we want to do. The second part of it is, can we still do this by maintaining a heads-up technique? You know, you look at a lot of alignment schemes and 3-4s, and you've got guys in 1 techs and 3 techs and all that kind of stuff. If we could feel like we can still play a head-up technique to be able to go strong or weak and have that principle, then that's, again, a go. It's something we can do, and we felt that we could. So just a couple of simple X's and O's. This is a standard for every defense, I'm sure, just a strong slant. But we call our strong slant a sally. We're head up. We're sallying to the near hip of the gap over. And you can see how our Mike and our hitter jigsaw with that front movement. You know, in a sally, the Mike's going to move to a B gap responsibility. The hitter's going to move to an A gap responsibility. But by being heads up, you don't know whether we're going one way or the other, or whether we're going to shift right before snap. So as long as our inside backers knew, we felt we could maintain it. And again, our outside backers, nothing's changing for them. So if we want to go the other direction, then our Mike now has backside A gap, and our hitter has play side B gap, or at least weak side B gap. Our safety might have to come down and protect C gap as soon as he reads run if they've got tight ends. But very simple. And again, by looking at that and drawing it up and doing our research, found that was something, a single gap responsibility that we could teach pretty quickly. Our guys would get, we could be aggressive into it. And then, of course, it allowed the flexibility by moving people and be able to come from different places. So this is a Mac stunt, our Mike through the C gap, or a Mac blitz with our Sam coming at the same time. We just call it a smack. Again, not to give out too much here. I'm kind of paranoid like most defensive coordinators, but you could see that it was going to give us a flexibility with a lot more speed. Something similar here. what we call a Trojan to try and shorten it, where we've got A and C gap to the wide side of the field with our backside linebacker now. This is a guy that in the past might have been a defensive end, and he's not going to be in coverage. This allows us to have the coverage to the B gap in the middle of the field. Just some examples of the things that we were looking at and saying, okay, this is a way we can maintain ourselves and still be able to make this transition. So finally we get to, again, we're in the principles that we kept. It would be apparent to us that now it was easier to move an outside backer down and move to an even man front than to move people back and move to an odd front. And our athleticism is going to provide for greater opportunities for that. So we could move the Sam down or the Will down, kind of more of a 5-2 out of the 3-4. Then it was easier for us to take those guys, put their hand on the ground, and then tell them they're going to back up. Again, we're cutting out that middleman. And then a part that I don't talk a great deal about, although I think it's a big part of our change, I wanted to simplify our key reads, particularly for the inside guys. And so we're going to keep a very strong mobile movement and maintain gap responsibilities, but our Mike and our hitter, we're going to have a much easier key read by reading the guard in front of them instead of trying to read the whole triangle from guard to fullback. And the 3-4 allowed us to simplify that as much as we could. If you see the image here, though, you can also see one of the things that we take great pride in. We're not a huge team. We don't have a ton of really big guys. What we do have is very athletic, mobile, fast attack. I like to call them our Raptors. And so those things allowed us to do that. So just an example of the ability to come down and reduce, go to an even man front out of our 3-4. We can move that nose over and play a 2-tech and move the end down and play a 2-tech, and then our Will can come down and still maintain that edge responsibility, but now it'll keep those guards off of our linebackers just like we used to do before. The game's changed a great deal too, right? Teams used to run a lot more than they do now. But as you can see in this particular film, we're playing a powerhouse here. This is Wheaton North, and they were slamming us. I mean, they were just coming right off the ball. Guards were coming straight at the Mike. I know that from college. When I was a Mike and the guards and they were all much bigger than I was. I hated that. I wanted the protection. So here, after a half of them slamming us, well, I hate to say I waited that long, but we made a transition and we began to reduce our outside linebacker. Number 34 here at the bottom of the screen, Quinn Erweiler is a special player. And he's going to kind of bait it a little bit and make himself not seen. But the tackle, he's not going to even worry about him. He's going to think, well, he's on the edge. He can't do anything about it. He's going to go get our hitter. And Quinn is able to come off that edge and make plays in the backfield. I'll let this play at regular speed. You can see him in that subtle movement down, and he's just trailing right down the line of scrimmage. So if we do that in a little bit more of a slow motion, the other thing you can see is our end is moved down to a 2 technique. And our nose is moved kind of into a 1 on the other side. That was just a Wheaton North thing because they also had this power fullback. But as you watch it, you can see that they're not getting to our inside linebackers. And he's able to stuff that up. Now that's a game changer. Wheaton North's going to have to kind of change what they're doing there. We can see it here from an end zone view. I'll let it roll through. But again, you can see Quinn, 34 on the outside. He'll subtly move down. You'll see that tackle go get the hitter, and Quinn has a free shot coming right straight down the line. His athleticism, his speed allows him to get down the line as our end and nose have jammed up the guards, and now our Mike can fill. He can come down and make a play from the backside. Let it roll one more time. You can see that H-back kind of come into the slot, but as we roll it, you all understand the concept. Now our guards can't get off to our middle backers, and they can come down and stuff, and then here comes Q on the backside. You can see him come down and take that tailback out. That, again, changed the game. It allowed us to come back in a game that we ended up winning in overtime. And so again, it was great to see that success of being able to play strong against a big powerhouse running team. And then, of course, we have to keep that hybrid cover 4. I showed you before the safety blitz. The cover 4 also allows us to have a very consistent edge game. Our relationship between our outside backer and our safeties on both sides are very clear in terms of we practice a great deal that edge responsibility. We'll see just a little bit of film here in a second. But we wanted to be able to maintain, as I've said a couple of times, that very strong cover 4 presence and what it allowed us to do on the edge and in coverage. And then there's one thing here on the slide that this would be a whole nother clinic talk, but again, X's and O's matter very little if you don't have the size, the speed, the hustle. And so regardless of whether we were going to be in a 4-3 or a 3-4, we were going to continue to coach hustle at a high level. And hopefully you can see that in some of this film that we've had. But right here, that same game against Wheaton North, they go to an unbalanced now. We've been stacking inside, so they're going to try and get the edge on us. And this is Quinn again here. Go back and see if we can hit it from the beginning. I might have to. One more. There we go. Great job by our outside backer of keeping that shoulder free, and the safety way out here on the edge on number 2. He's coming down his whole time. He's keeping his eyes on the relationship between the outside backer and the tailback coming on a jet. Notice that relationship. That's something we had practiced for years. We were not willing to make that change. So that was one of our principles. We have to keep that edge responsibility in that game. These guys both do a tremendous job. And then I mentioned hustle. Look at the hustle coming from the back and the inside from our hitter and from our Mike, even our movement down the line of scrimmage. And if we somehow were going to lose those things as a principle, you don't change principles, right? You break yourself against them. We were not going to change our philosophy and our belief to go to a 3-4. The 3-4 happened to fit into whatever we wanted to do with that. And then we go to this last play here. I'm going to pause it. You can see all of the things that we wanted to maintain here in this play. This is against Willowbrook in the quarterfinal game this year. Number 40, the outside backer on the left of the screen, he's going to bump down and reduce. Even though this is a pass play, I think they ran a total of 2 times in the entire game. They went into an empty set and tried to throw every play at us. You're also going to see that our end on that left side and our end on the right side are both in vortex. They're both going to move down, shift, pre-snap. That'll move our backers a little bit. And then that's going to get the eyes of that tackle. Again, that mobility, we're not where they expect us to be, so nobody is paying any attention to that hybrid safety that we've got out here on the edge. We look like we're one coverage. We jump to a man coverage. The quarterback has to hold just long enough for us to be able to, again, get that big play from that game changer of the safety. This is a drive stopper and allows us to maintain a lead as they're going in the red zone. And so I just want to show that one more time, partly because I love it, but partly because it really symbolizes what I've been talking about, what we wanted to maintain. So you can see the shift here. That's pre-snap right before their snap. Our hitter moves. He changes his gap responsibility. Our Will linebacker is coming down inside now. He's going to get the eyes of the tackle. And once again, here comes that safety off of the edge. Sorry, I'm not too good with this film. But we get the desired result that we want to be able to have. I've lost images here on my screen. But in order to make this smooth transition, I hope I can help with that process. Again, I just want to go back. Again, not a lot of X's and O's. This doesn't necessarily have to be even defense. It's if you're looking to make a change, And I've talked to a lot of high school coaches, even some college coaches in our area who said, yeah, we've looked to move to a 3-4. I think people get nervous about it because they think that's something wrong with what they were doing before. We were confident what we were doing was actually strong, so we didn't feel like we needed to do anything. But we wanted to go through a nice process. I'm proud of our coaching staff for the study that they did, the patience that we took, the integrity to what we wanted to do. But I would recommend that you specifically look at why you're making the change. What do you want to get out of it? And then what have you been doing that's successful? And what have you been doing that is not successful, that is the reason that you're making that change? And then lastly, again, the principles that you have as a program, the philosophy that you have as a program, what are you not willing to change to be able to do that? And if you can do all those things and then give the time and the research, it's worth a consideration. My email is at the top of the show, matthew.holm@bps101.net. If you have any football questions, you'd like to just talk football, there's nothing better in the world than well, of course, playing it is the best thing in the world. But we could talk about it too. So thanks, Chief Pigskin. Appreciate the opportunity. Take care, gentlemen. Look forward to the next season.